Hey everyone, happy Friday. We made it through another week of crazy. Happy crazy. So yesterday we got to see part 1 of the Dr. Frat Bra. I was trying to figure out how to say it just right. They've got like a little bit of a southern twang. Frat bra. Yeah, I give up. I'm a pathetic white girl. I can't say it cool. All right. Immunity hearing. So what this is his hearing on his motion for immunity from prosecution under Georgia Code 16-3.24.2, which basically says he's immune from prosecution because he is entitled to a self-defense assertion. So we are on to part 2, and part 2 is going to include testimony from several witnesses. I'm not sure about how far we're going to get, and I think we're going to get through most of this, and then we will hit part 3, which will be testimony from Mr. Cooper. No, not hanging with Mr. Cooper. That would be cool. This is Mr. Cooper that attacked him. So, Mr. Cooper got shot. So, that will probably end up being tomorrow. But anyways, FYI, pro tip. If you're going to show a big, long stream video, you should write down where you stop so you don't spend 30 minutes trying to figure out exactly where it was. Just saying. You know.
Police officers at Grady. I don't remember the exact words, but I don't remember also telling what the macro of the conversation was with me and the officers. I spoke to about 3 or 4 officers that night. I don't know what's the macro of the conversation, verbiage.
There might be a little overlap from yesterday because I
And
didn't
you
get it
did
quite
give
right.
a second statement to a group of officers. That'd be Officers Vickers, Officers York, and Officer Barnett. During this statement, you said Cooper rushed you and said, "I'll kill you." Do you remember giving that statement at all?
Yeah, don't know the officers, but I remember it was a group of officers, about 5 or 6 throughout that night at Grady in that parking lot.
And do you remember demonstrating for those officers what Cooper did prior to you shooting him?
Demonstrating?
Yeah, similar to how a judge had you demonstrate for the court.
Not exactly.
So you wouldn't remember demonstrating that Cooper's hand was down at his side when he rushed you?
No, I don't remember.
And I'm just going to approach and show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit Number 2. Exhibit Number 2 is also, it's a body camera of Officer Vickers where Officer Barnett is present.
Okay.
And, you don't recall demonstrating for officers that when you were rushed, Cooper's hand was down at his side.
No, sir.
And I just want to give you an opportunity to explain maybe any inconsistencies from today based on that statement back then.
And I appreciate that, but I don't recall the ergonomics of displaying how Mr. Cooper was standing or where was his hands. I don't recall that. But I do remember speaking to multiple officers.
You touched a little bit on direct about your military training and experience. So you're familiar, or how much training have you had hours-wise in firearms training?
I couldn't give you an exact number.
So you said you did 20 years in the military?
Yes. Well, at a minimum, you yearly go to firearms training at a minimum.
And roughly how many hours is that one yearly qualification you
At a minimum of an airman, we 8-hour range day.
So over the course of 20 years, at a minimum, you would have 160 hours of firearms training.
Okay.
And during those 160 hours of training, you've learned how guns work.
Yes, sir.
And you've learned that when you point a firearm at something and you pull the trigger, a round discharges and goes in the direction of the muzzle of the firearm.
You're correct. Yes, sir.
And in your training,
Is it just me, or is he being like a little patronizing?
are you given specific parameters of when you're allowed to point a firearm at something?
Yes, sir.
And when would be an appropriate situation to do that?
Now my military training is when you're in defense of yourself, you're in defense of government property, such as I work the flight line, aircraft, or classified information.
You can shoot someone to keep them away from classified information?
Certain scenarios, yes, Your Honor.
Huh.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Certain scenarios, not.
Could have gotten dangerous down in Florida.
And when you say to protect yourself, is that from somebody punching you in the face?
It doesn't itemize a scenario, sir, but to protect oneself from bodily harm. So it doesn't itemize scenarios of protection.
Now, I also think you testified about this on direct, so please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, sir.
But did you say that you've assisted in training police in the use of firearms?
Yes. As far as marksmanship, my first 2 years in the military, I was combat arms training and maintenance. So we ran pretty much the base ranges, wherever you were stationed. You ran the range. You did purchase orders for weapons, and you kept everybody that was TDY applicable or that would go to a foreign country or war. You keep everybody must be certified. Some get certified biannually, some get certified annually. So we ran the range. So every day on the ranges, you're gonna have a group, flight, squadron of troops come in to get their yearly training. So yes.
And
Thank you.
when you were involved in this aspect of training, did you teach officers about when they're allowed to use deadly force or force to effect an arrest or something similar?
No.
You testified on direct that when you got to Grady, you called an attorney.
On my way to Grady, sir. Yes, sir.
Way to Grady.
Yes, sir.
Why did you do that?
No disrespect to you, but for common sense, something had just happened, tragic, and I was involved, and I wanted it instantly to clear my name. But also, once I get down there, I knew I was going to try to talk to someone and explain what happened. And just in case I was arrested, I needed someone to represent me and to protect me and to be an advocate for me.
I believe you
This is the
mentioned
cross.
on direct that some of the things Mr. Cooper was doing, it wasn't the time or the place for it, but it was the time or place to bring out a gun.
I was transitioning from the back of my truck to the front of my truck. It would, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get my verbiage right to respond.
That's okay. Take your time.
It wasn't an appropriate time or inappropriate
This
time.
is where we
I was
stopped yesterday.
transitioning
Sorry.
my personal belongings from the back of my truck to the front.
And just a few more questions just to clear a couple of points up that I have here. You testified on direct, when you made your phone call to DeAndre Royals,
He brought a gun to a beer pong tournament. It was a frat party. Come on.
you mentioned that you were perturbed
Perturbed?
on direct.
Perturbed.
You
That's
said
a
that
good
you were
word.
perturbed at that time,
I like that
Okay.
word.
but you didn't leave the party then.
No, sir.
Mistake number one.
You also testified about Jamal Carter informing you that Coop had gotten into it with a guy named Bruce.
No, I didn't say Jamal told me.
So you
But
got
I-
information from
Yes.
someone
Yes,
who'd
sir.
gotten into it with Bruce,
Yes, sir.
and you didn't leave then.
No, sir.
I think their defense is he was standing there having a conversation, walking from the back of his truck to the front with the gun in his hand because he was moving it from the back to the front, having a conversation with the other guy. And Coop comes charging at him. And his instinct was, okay, this aggressive guy who I've had confrontations with all night is charging at me. And he just raised his hand in his non-dominant hand and shot. I think that's their defense was immediate threat came and I shot, that it wasn't a planned thing. He didn't go get his gun for protection or anything like that. That was my understanding of their defense. I don't know if that matters or not.
Just one moment, Your Honor. Mr. Thomas, you said earlier that you consumed alcohol at the party.
Yes, earlier that day.
How much?
2 beers.
I don't know, maybe a drink or two. I can't give you an exact.
What is a drink for you? Is it half a beer? Is it a fifth of vodka? When you say you had a drink, I don't know what they were serving.
A bottle of wine.
The infamous red plastic cups.
Yeah, the
Yes.
solo cups.
Solo cup, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Your Honor, I had it would have been 2, but one drink got punched out of my hand.
Right.
That first one was a Tito's and tonic. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It was 2 rounds
So
of
you
beer
only had
pong, Your Honor.
one Tito's and tonic
Yes.
throughout the 9 to 10 hours you were at this party.
Yeah, I believe so.
Always.
I think that's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Hawkins, do you
Hey.
have any redirect for Mr. Thomas?
Absolutely, Your Honor. Mr. Thomas, you weren't the only one that consumed alcohol that day, correct?
No, ma'am.
And this was again a party, barbecue, family and friends party.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the cross, the ADA asked you brought a gun to a cookout. You bring your gun everywhere you go, right?
Yeah, it stays in my vehicle.
So you didn't wake up that morning, well, you didn't know you were going to a cookout. You didn't drive to the cookout saying, hey, I'm gonna bring my gun
No,
and I'm gonna pull it out
no,
and I'm gonna shoot somebody.
no, ma'am.
And you were also asked on cross, were you injured during the second encounter? The second encounter is when you were punched in the face, right?
Yes.
Objection leading.
So some of the questions were there. I think you were orienting the witness, but it's redirect. It's not recross. Most of your questions have ended with right, but this is your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sure.
What happened during that second encounter?
The second encounter, when I saw how loud and he started cussing again, I told the DJ, I said, this is not gonna work, pretty much. I was like, I'm good. And that's when I told Cooper that, Mr. Cooper, I said, I'm show you something called a little deference. I say, you know what? We ain't not gonna talk. I say, Frat brother just fixed me a drink and I'm gonna fix you one. What are you drinking? Let me fix you a drink. And that's when he punched me.
Were you injured?
I didn't bleed, but yeah, he punched me in my face.
And when you fired your one shot, what were you protecting yourself from?
Mr. Cooper.
If I'm not
I know.
mistaken,
I like him.
on cross, the state asked you, were you protecting yourself? You were using your gun to protect yourself from a punch. The punch happened. When did the punch happen? The first, second, or third encounter?
Second,
And when did the shot happen?
third.
And that's when Mr. Cooper was lunging at you.
Yes, ma'am.
And is that when you pulled your firearm to protect yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
And at that time, where was Mr. Cooper's hands as he was lunging at you?
I saw the one hand at this point above shoulder, and I didn't see the other hand.
So 2 hands,
I didn't see two.
one was visible and one was not.
Yes, ma'am.
And about how many times did Mr. Cooper tell you he could kill you?
Me directly, probably about, I want to say around 3, but he said it throughout the day to different people. He was getting into it with a couple of people, but to me directly, about 3.
3 in that final encounter, or 3 if you think through all the times you and he exchanged words?
That final encounter, maybe 2. That second encounter, 1.
Okay. All right. Mr. Costello, any recross?
Just very briefly, Judge. So you just testified that Mr. Cooper told you he was going to kill you during the second encounter.
He said, "I kill you, motherfucker. I kill you with my bare hand." That's the Marine cliche statement.
But you still stayed at the party.
Yes.
That's all, Judge.
Okay. All right. Mr. Thomas, you may step down. We're going to take our morning break.
I don't remember. He wasn't the Marine. The other guy was the Marine, and he was Air Force.
First
I
Maddox,
remember.
Frederick. Last name Maddox, Maddox.
Mr. Maddox, I'm Judge McBurney. It's nice to meet you. I need to make sure, you need to make sure when you're testifying that you get close to the microphone so we can hear you, and make sure you speak slowly. You just spelled your name in record time, and you're not going to get to leave earlier just because you talk fast. You'll have to say everything 4 times if you talk fast. So I may not want to be here, maybe a little nervous. I get all that, but just make sure you speak slowly.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Costello.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Maddox, what county and state do you currently live in?
DeKalb County in Atlanta, Georgia.
And what do you do for a living?
I do tattoos.
And do you have any particular ties to any fraternities?
No, sir.
What's your shop? We can
Can
check
you
out.
describe for the court how you may know Christopher Swain?
I know Chris because I used to date his sister.
Do you know anybody by the name of Kendrick Cooper?
Yes.
And how do you know Mr. Cooper?
I know him mutually through Chris Swain.
And do you know Mr. Phil Thomas?
No, doesn't.
So I want to draw your attention to May 15th of 2021.
Before we get there, just so more context, you used to date Mr. Swain's sister. Did that situation end in a bad way, or it was mutual? Hey, it's been nice, but we're going to go separate.
Oh, yeah, it was mutual.
Mutual. Okay.
Yeah.
So like you and Swain don't have an issue because you weren't good to his sister or anything. Like
Nah, me and her, we still, we're still friends.
Okay. It's just not that way anymore.
Yeah. No.
Okay. Got it.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Judge. Mr. Maddox, I'm going to draw your attention to May 15th of 2021. Do you recall attending any parties or cookouts that day?
Yes, it was at the house.
And when you say the house, was it Chris Swain's house?
Yes.
Yeah, can we approach for just a brief second, please?
Sure. Yeah, you come on. In fact,
I thought that was autocorrect. I didn't know he really meant
if we need to go
that. Austin. That's not very nice. I'm working on a story about a missing Marine.
No one is about to wait.
I can make that clear, and when Mr. Swain testifies, you should feel free to.
See, I hate when they leave their mics on because then I can't cut it out because it looks like they're still talking.
Ms. Foster, is that person in here now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay, up We're done.
When you're ready, Mr. Costello.
Thank you, Judge. All right, Mr. Maddox, so you were at Chris Swain's house. I believe that was the last question I asked.
Yes, sir.
Does 688 South Elizabeth Place sound like the address for Mr. Swain's house?
Yes, sir.
Is that located in Fulton County?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what the party was for?
Should have stayed out of Fulton County.
Man, when we came up, it was just, a lot of frat brothers that was there. So it just, to my knowledge, it was just a get together with all the brothers, the bros.
This would be Omegas, and you're not an Omega, but it was all right for you to be there because you and Swain are friends.
Yes.
Were you dating Mr. Swain's sister at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so that might have been another reason why it was okay for you to be there.
Yes.
Was she there?
Yes.
And you were a guest at this party.
Yeah. Well, everybody.
And what time did the party start? You remember?
Nah, we was already gone from the house at the time. When we got back, it was already started. Like it was already going.
And do you remember what time you may have gotten there?
Nope.
I think we pulled back up to the house maybe like 7:30, 8 o'clock between that time frame.
So you got there at 7:30 p.m. Were you aware of any kind of physical altercations that took place at the party at that point?
No.
Between the hours of 7:30 and 11:30, were you at that party?
Yes.
During those 4 hours or so, were you aware of any physical altercations?
Yes.
Did you witness any of them personally?
Yes.
And what did you witness?
I witnessed the argument, holding back, weapon drawn, a shot.
So you actually saw a shooting.
Yeah. Yes.
Was it, so you, the word you used was I witnessed argument, holding back, weapon drawn. Is that all one incident or you saw three different things?
That was all one incident, as into the argument going on, leading to them being held back from each other, and then from being held back from each other, a weapon was drawn. And yeah, it was all in one, it was all in the same incident.
One situation. Okay, I assume you're going to dissect this.
I am, Judge.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that was all one thing. It sounds like it evolved ultimately into a gun being drawn.
Yeah, from starting from the argument.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause
So
that's a totally
prior
different
to this
version of
weapon
events.
being brought out and this argument and shooting, did you see anything else occur personally before that at this party?
No.
During the party, did you drink any alcohol?
No, I wasn't.
Did you use any drugs?
No.
So I want to break down this incident that you witnessed. Do you know who was involved in this incident?
I only know Cooper. The other person, I don't know him personally. I don't even remember his name.
Okay. Can you describe for the court, as specifically as you can, what you saw?
All right, well, it started when I was upstairs, switching out, changing my clothes, and I heard the arguing downstairs in the living room. Once I didn't really pay too much attention because, the frat brothers, it was drinking. I know how loud it gets. So when you think about it, once it escalated outside, that's when I looked out the window and seen that everybody was outside. We go outside, still see them arguing. As we see them arguing, I see Cooper, he get held back because at this point it had done escalated more to what it was already. And from Cooper being held back and the other person, I don't know his name, from him being trying to distance himself at the time, that's when I had already seen his weapon drawn. So while his weapon was drawn at that moment from Cooper, breaking out of the held back as into still trying to communicate and how it was, next thing you know, bang, through and through, hit Cooper to hit Swain in his leg.
Okay. I just want to clear up a couple of things for the record. So you were inside the house and you noticed that there was some sort of argument, and then you went outside.
It was the arguments were as when I was told, the arguments were starting in the living room, but they was already loud at that point, so we didn't think that there was argument. But once it went outside to notice that it was an argument, that's when I went outside behind everybody too.
Okay, so you were outside and you witnessed an argument outside of the house.
Outside of the house, yes.
And that argument was involving who?
Cooper
No.
and the other dude. I don't know his name.
And that's fine. And you know, if you refer to him as the other dude, it's okay. I just want to make sure that we distinguish between Cooper and there was another party.
Yes.
So the trial actually took place about a week or two ago. However, just to spoil it for you, the judge still has not issued his decision in it. So you don't get to know the outcome yet. We all have to sit on the edge of our seats until it happens. Maybe we'll get lucky. It'll come out today.
How long did this argument between Cooper and the other dude, how long did it last?
We're all live.
By the time I got outside, give or take, what I remember, give or take 10 to 15 minutes as they were arguing, but still trying to calm it down. Yeah, about 10, 15 minutes from my taking it from when I got outside.
During those 10 to 15 minutes,
What do you call it? The live five?
I know you've already
Live
said that
five?
other dude had a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see anybody else outside with a weapon of any type?
No.
So Cooper was unarmed?
Yes.
And when we're talking about weapons, I'm asking about brass knuckles, pepper spray, knives, guns, anything like that seen?
I didn't see nothing else but a gun.
And how long into the argument was it when other dude brought out a gun?
From the argument, when they seen it, give it probably about 10 minutes. I don't know. On out to when I got outside, probably about 10 minutes, because when they was trying to, as they was separating them, as they was trying to get the distance from them, once he made his way around on the other side, that's when I seen that it was drawn because of how he was holding it with his hand, like.
So there was 10 minutes of back and forth before you saw a weapon.
Yes.
After the weapon was drawn, explain for the judge what you saw.
Before you get to that, Mr. Costello just said the weapon was drawn. Did you see the other dude actually pull the gun from a waistband or a holster, or just for a while you saw people with just hands, and the next thing you noticed, hey, this guy's got a gun in his hand?
Exactly what I saw.
You don't know if someone handed it to him or it fell from the sky or he pulled it out of his waist.
No, I can't tell you if somebody handed it to him or he pulled it, but all I know is it was drawn and it was in his hand.
Got it. And when you say it was in his hand was at his side, so there's a gun in his hand, or it was pointed in the direction of?
He had the barrel. The barrel was down.
Okay.
So as he had the barrel down, as in like, I'm getting ready. If need be.
Got it. I'm letting everyone who's looking at me know I got a piece in my hand.
Okay. Yeah.
It wasn't under a shirt or anything like that, because you could see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you think about it, this is an interesting choice of a witness. Supposedly there was dozens of people there, multiple people standing around. Several people were holding Cooper back. There was other people standing watching this, and they choose the witness who was in the house and missed the majority of the start of the altercation and came out at the end. It's just something to think about in their choice of who to put on the stand to tell their side of the story.
And so I think my last question was, Mr. Maddox, after you noticed that the other dude had a weapon,
mm-hmm.
How much longer did the argument last?
Once I seen that he had a weapon, we back out. They still arguing. Give or take 2-3 minutes. Right after that, next thing you know, pow.
Okay, so kind of walk Judge McBurney through those 2 to 3 minutes up to the gunshot. What exactly did you see?
All right, so as he was trying to steal
So that's actually a really good question. It was going on in the Brian Koberger case, the Idaho guy, where he was trying to make one of the surviving roommates come and testify for him, and her lawyers were fighting it, and finally she agreed to it. It's pretty hard to refuse to be a witness if you're subpoenaed. You don't have a lot of reasons that will get you out of it. Another thing I wanted to point out is he's telling the story that the two men were going back and forth arguing before the shot happened. Now, the first shooter's story is that he just came charging at him out of nowhere. So we already have two different versions of the story. Let's count how many we have by the end.
He was actually trying to get his distance from Cooper as well.
And when you say he, can you just clarify who he is?
The other dude.
Other dude, gotcha.
When you say, you've said this several times now, who's trying to get his distance, were there people preventing the other dude from moving away, or was he up against a wall? So he had
actually just trying to, everybody was just trying to de-escalate the situation at that point. Why the weapon was drawn at that point, because it was like, we're out here having a party. You don't need to have a weapon right now. During, from it, the argument was going on and everything too. So I can say as he was trying to distance himself while the gun was drawn and shown, it was, like I said, between them 2 or 3 minutes while he did it, it was still arguing. I want to say.
That's why I'm here. And to watch Frat.
Well, let me help you out here, Mr. Maddox, and kind of keep you on a track. In those 2 to 3 minutes right before the shooting, what did you notice Cooper doing?
He was still arguing as he's being held back, just still talking, but it was just literally strictly talking.
Would you say he was yelling?
But everyone was, but yeah.
Did you hear Mr. Cooper use, some pretty explicit language?
From both parties.
Of course.
At any point in time, did you see Mr. Cooper doing anything specific towards other dude?
No. All I literally seen was just arguing. It was as if, trying to get in each other's face for the argument, but it was still on everybody trying to keep the space and the distance between them. So like any other sudden movements, I don't remember seeing anything.
About how far away was Cooper from the other dude?
Why don't you, I don't want you to have to guess. Why don't you tell Mr. Costello where he should stand? You're the other dude. So you did a good job showing me where the gun was. So you're the other dude. Where should Mr. Costello stand so that he is where someone is holding Cooper back?
Okay, I can stand up.
Sure.
So I think they might have taken the witnesses out of order. Because he's actually, this is the prosecution that's questioning him.
Okay. And I want you to stay right there for a second, both of you, because I'm still trying to figure out what you're describing the other dude is doing. I got it that you said Cooper's still talking, fussing, jawing, and people are maybe holding them back a little bit. And what is anyone doing, if anything, to the other dude? Are they holding him back?
He's actually like this, but I actually do see his hand as in y'all stay back.
Okay.
I can't give him that. Y'all stay back.
Okay. But what was behind him? Could he have walked away, or were there people behind?
I hate this. I mean, I like the way the courtroom's set up, that you can see the witness really good and you can hear them good. But the fact that you can't see the prosecutor, and when they step off to demonstrate, which they very much like to act things out in this courtroom, you can't see what they're doing and you can barely hear them. And that's kind of frustrating because I want to hear it. I want to see what's going on. But to answer your question, really briefly, when someone gets on the stand and refuses to do what they're supposed to be doing, which is testifying, then they treat them as a hostile witness. And they're basically asking them yes or no questions. And you are required to answer those. And if you don't answer them, then you can be held in contempt of court. If you answer them falsely, then you face perjury charges. So, I mean, yeah, it's up to you if you want to gamble with that. But legally, you kind of have to do it. You don't really have a choice. That's the law.
Behind them. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
And
I'm gonna
and just for
change the
record,
title.
Judge,
Other
estimating
dude
the
hearing.
distance between Mr. Maddox and I, my wingspan is about 6'3".
I like
So I think it's probably between 6.5 and 7 feet distance.
Okay, that's your estimate.
Thanks, Mr. Maddox. So we have other dude is holding a handgun, a weapon. We have Cooper yelling. He's about 6-7 feet away. What happened next?
As Cooper break away from everybody still trying to do it, as he break away, boom. Hit him in the stomach, through and through. Chris Swain, he was behind him. He hit him in the leg.
And when you say he hit him, are you saying that other dude shot
Yeah.
Cooper?
Other dude shot him. It went through and through. Hit Chris Swain in the leg.
Okay. And do you recall what Cooper was doing with his hands just prior to the shooting?
As in, like, from what I seen, as he's seeing the gun, I guess trying to block the bullet.
Absolutely.
So
Like-
could you demonstrate for the judge what you saw Cooper do with his hands right before the shooting?
As he
I need
breaks,
a other
as he
dude's
break
shirt.
away, all I seen was just this hand gesture.
And-
Literally just his hand gesture, no fist balled up, no, I'm in a defense mode or attack mode, none of that. All I seen was his hands up in this general way. That's all I remember.
And Judge, just
what
for
I
the
see.
record, the witness did put both of his hands up towards his torso, towards his shoulders, and had his palms open.
Come up with a funny
Well,
other
Cooper-
dude saying I can put on a shirt.
Right. That you say Cooper did. He's
Cooper
just
did.
saying the witness, you were demonstrating what you recall Mr. Cooper doing. And I saw the same thing you saw where Mr. Maddox has both
Yeah,
hands
absolutely.
up, palms facing outward in front of his chest.
Thank you, Judge. And
better
after
than
you
nothing.
saw other dude shoot Coop, what do you recall happening next, Mr. Maddox?
As it went through, he was in shock, as in like he got shot, and we didn't know that Chris was hit at the time until he yells out, "You shot me," and passed out because he got hit in the artery in his thigh.
And what happened after you guys realized there were people shot?
From me being in the military, the certified EMT just jumped right in. Y'all apply pressure to his stomach, hold it in the back. Somebody give me a belt. I'm gonna apply a tourniquet to Chris' leg so we can hold it down. Yo, while we
You're talking about what you did.
Yes,
So you're former military with EMT training.
yes.
Got it. And were you describing what was done to both people who were shot? So you helped render aid or directed someone to render aid to Mr. Cooper.
To Cooper, while I render aid to Chris Swain.
So you were hands-on with Swain
Yes.
and telling people what they needed to do with Cooper.
And what did you do with Mr. Swain?
I got a
That's
belt.
why he was a
someone gave
witness.
me that
Great
belt,
credibility.
wrapped it around the leg tight to where I can, try to stop the bleeding and holding it. We got him up, put him in the car, and we drove to Grady, both of them.
And after you arrived at Grady, did that really conclude your involvement in this incident?
Once we got to Grady, and I told the officers, what I seen, what I knew. Yeah, that was it.
Okay, Judge, I don't think I have anything further for Mr. Maddox.
All right, I've got a couple more questions and then Ms. Hawkins or Ms. Foster may have questions for you. So you've described Mr. Cooper as breaking away.
Okay, so should I put on a shirt? Brah. It was other dude.
Someone was holding him back. Was it Mr. Swain who was holding him back, or you just know there were people holding him back?
It was just people that were just out there.
Okay. He was being held back. Other dude not being held back or propelled. He's standing his ground with the gun in his hand. Okay. Meaning yes?
Yes.
Okay. When Mr. Cooper broke free, you've described how his hands were, both hands in front of him, palms forward, open. Was he approaching the other dude, or did he simply just break free? Because there's two different things. You break free and you're standing still. Another is you break free and you're coming madly at other dude.
No, he literally just broke free because everybody just kept grabbing while he was just simply saying he was just trying to talk, but he broke free. And like I said, it was noticeable that other dude already had his weapon drawn. So it was on some, like I see it, I'm still trying to, talk.
So you had Mr. Costello stand in a certain point that you estimate was about how far apart Mr. Cooper and other dude were when the shooting happened. So as I'm understanding your testimony, Mr. Cooper broke free and was effectively stationary with his hands up when he got shot. That's as far away as he was when he got shot? Or did he actually take 4 steps towards other dude and the shooting they were 2 feet apart?
Forgot dude.
At that moment, I really honestly can't say because
It was
all the
chaos.
commotion that
Sure.
was going on. Mhm.
Okay. You did place Mr. Cooper and other dude as far apart as you did, however many feet that is, 7, 8. Your recollection is, and then there was a shooting and it got real crazy and I know Cooper didn't move forward, or actually Cooper was basically right on top of this guy when he fired. You're not sure what happened in that one?
At that moment, no.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from the defense?
So I believe this happened 2 years ago. I'm trying to find the
Mr.
date.
Maddox, I'm attorney Chinwei Foster. I represent Phil
I
Thomas.
can understand him not remembering.
Who you have referred to as the other dude. I'm just gonna ask you a few questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Maddox, you would agree that you spoke with the officers on May 16th of 2021, correct?
Yes.
You would agree that your memory was fresh and you weren't fresh in 2021 than it is now, 2 years later, correct?
Yes.
And you would admit that what you told the officers on the day in question was probably more accurate than what you're saying today,
Yes, ma'am.
correct?
You're lucky.
And since the incident in 2021, who all have you talked to about this case?
I left it alone after we talked to the officers that night. Like it was on, Chris Cooper and your client as well. So I didn't know that I had anything else to talk about it. We just left it alone. Yes, ma'am.
And so you're telling, and you're dated Swain's sister?
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
And you're friends with Swain?
Yes.
You're telling this court that you haven't talked about the case since May 2021?
No, I haven't.
You not talked to anyone?
From the day of, from everything, no, I haven't. I honestly forgot about it until I got called to come into court.
You forgot that your friend Cooper was shot and your friend Swain was shot?
No, I'm not gonna forget about it. I thought that stuff had already been handled, as far as what I'm saying, because of the time frame of how long it's been since then.
You didn't realize how long it takes us to move cases in Fulton County. Yeah. It's like, dang, this was May 21. They've got to be done with this.
Just something, yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to Fulton.
So you've spoken to Cooper and Swain since May 2021?
No, today was my first day seeing Cooper since, and the last time I spoken with Swain was about a job in January.
So when you saw Cooper today, did you speak with him about what happened?
Try.
No.
And so you've not talked to your friend Cooper at all?
No.
From May until today? Not spoken to him at all?
No.
You sure about that?
No.
You're not sure?
I haven't talked to him. No, I'm sure, but I haven't talked to him.
And you have spoken with Swain, but it was just about a job?
Yes.
And you've not talked to his sister?
No.
Now, on the day in question, you said that you got there at about 7:30.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't drinking at the party, correct?
No.
Were you drinking previously?
No.
And when you got to the party, what did you do?
Me and Swain's sister, her name is Dominique, we actually got to the house. We had been out because we had the kids. So while we was getting the kids situated while the party was going, we was upstairs. And
These are Dominique's kids or your kids, or you had kids together?
No, she had her little girl and I had my little girl.
Okay, so your daughter and her daughter were together and you were getting them, as you said, situated upstairs.
Mhm.
And so you mentioned on the
It sounds like they were being responsible adults trying to put their kids to bed, and the frat boys were having a party downstairs.
at some time, one point you changed clothes.
Yeah.
What did you change clothes for?
We was changing out from washing the day out. We had been out already, so I was taking a shower.
Okay. Now, at some point, Coop also changed clothes, correct?
Mhm.
You remember that?
Yes. He was changing clothes downstairs.
He was changing clothes because his shirt was ripped, correct?
Yeah.
No, he was getting ready to go
All right.
out after the party, more so, but it got a little later on and the party was still going.
Do you recall Cooper ever telling you or anyone that he had to change clothes because his shirt was ripped?
No.
Did you see him changing clothes?
No, I saw one outfit when we got there and then another outfit after everything was outside.
Did you see him go in the bedroom to change clothes?
No.
He was actually changing his clothes in the living room in front of everyone, correct?
I don't know. Like I was upstairs while everything was downstairs was going on. So in the midst of everything, I don't know if he was in the living room or the bathroom or even the stairway because I was upstairs in the room. But I did
Hopefully they
see
were
that
sleeping.
when I got there, he was in one outfit versus to when I went downstairs after I changed clothes, he was in another outfit.
And you don't recall whether his shirt was ripped or not?
For him to change, no, I don't.
And now the were upstairs. Where was Cooper at when you went upstairs?
Everyone was downstairs.
Did you see the other guy downstairs when you got there?
Other guy meaning your client, the other dude,
He's the person. Yes, I'm gonna just keep it going.
but it's the other dude.
I'm sorry.
Other
You see
dude.
the other dude downstairs when you went upstairs?
Oh no.
Okay. You didn't
This
see him,
judge.
saw Cooper.
Yes.
Cracks me up.
In fact, Cooper was in the downstairs. He was arguing with a bunch of people downstairs. When you went upstairs, correct?
I don't recall arguing with everybody. Like I said, it was a bunch of commotion that was just going on because it was a party. So
I'm pretty sure they took him out of order because having watched the whole thing, this all makes sense to me. But if you haven't watched it, it makes no sense at all, which is why I probably didn't even remember it from the first time around. Yeah, there's a whole story the other guy tells about why he changed clothes because he got into a fight inside that was totally unrelated to any of this. And yeah, so they must have taken him out of order. I can't. That's the only thing that makes sense because the prosecution started.
There was a commotion. In fact, the director said it was an argument that you heard upstairs.
No,
yeah,
the victim.
because yes, that was going.
Before it
You
happened.
saw Coop, but you didn't see the other dude,
Mhm.
right? So whoever Coop was arguing with, it wasn't the other dude, right?
I don't know. To
But you know that you didn't see the other dude, but you saw Coop.
Mhm.
Okay. And you know
So two things. One, make sure you let Mr. Maddox completely answer before you ask your next question. And Mr. Maddox, I need you, if your answer is yes, you need to say yes or yeah, but an actual word rather than
Mhm.
because the court reporter, it's not her role to say, was that a mm-mm or a mm-hmm? So just make sure whatever your answer is, yes, no, maybe, I have no idea what you're talking about,
M's or
that you get it out with words. Thank you.
You know that you saw Coop downstairs.
yes,
You know that you didn't see the other dude downstairs.
yes,
You know that Coop was arguing, correct?
it was stuff that was going downstairs. Yes,
Okay. So I can infer that Coop was not arguing with the other dude, right?
at that moment while I was upstairs, you can say that. Yes,
Okay. But and you mentioned while you were upstairs, it was loud, it was belligerent, it was a lot of commotion going on. Was Coop inside?
no, it was just commotion that was just going on downstairs, as into what it like to me referring to going outside to see that okay now is Coop and now the other dude.
So what they're trying to do is prove that the victim was instigating things because he got into a fight with somebody else between the 3 altercations with the shooter. And while he was inside, he got into an altercation with someone else. He had changed into clothes to go out for the evening and ripped his pants in the process. So that's why he changed clothes, and it'll make sense in the end. But that's what this whole conversation is about. And trying to show that he was the instigator, because if the shooter was the instigator, then he can't claim self-defense and immunity under this statute.
Thomas T.A.
Son of a... Yep. I just clicked the wrong button. All right. I think he was almost done. So we're just going to pretend that he was almost done, because I just totally screwed that up. And I know you guys don't want to watch that all over again. And actually, we don't need to watch this guy. I was going to cut it out because he really doesn't say anything important. Yeah. Meg screwed everything up. It happens. Okay. I think this is where we want to be. Fuck a duck.
Can you describe for the court
Who?
to shoot someone that they know is unarmed?
Okay.
Hold on. What is he doing? That's okay. He's done with him. Right there?
That's in the record is insufficient for the defense to carry their burden by a preponderance that the defendant is entitled to immunity in this case. I think that when you heard from the defendant and Mr. Carter, there are a couple of clear things here. Mr. Cooper was unarmed throughout the entirety of this 7+ hour party. He was unarmed at the time that he approached Mr. Thomas. And he was unarmed at the time that he was shot. I also think that the evidence shows that Mr. Cooper's hands were up while he was running towards Mr. Thomas. I don't think that it's reasonable to utilize deadly force in a scenario where somebody is merely running at you with their hands exposed. Now, I do know that Mr. Thomas did testify that Mr. Cooper's hand was behind his back, but I also, I think that the evidence shows that he may have been pulling his pants up based on Mr. Carter's testimony. I think that at this point, what we have is Mr. Thomas, who doesn't normally arm himself when he gets inside of a vehicle, armed himself prior to Mr. Cooper running at him from a distance between 100 and 200 feet, where he had an avenue of escape. And I think that the record also shows that there was a good bit of distance between Mr. Thomas and Mr. Cooper when the shot was fired, as evidenced by Mr. Carter's testimony when Your Honor asked him about his arm's length away from Mr. Thomas. It was arm's length away plus a couple of steps, which is several feet. So I think that there was definitely other options that could have been utilized by Mr. Thomas prior to resorting to using a firearm, pointing it at the direction of Mr. Cooper and consequently Mr. Swain, who's in the area, and discharging a round, especially given Mr. Thomas's military knowledge, training, and experience over the years, a 20-year career in the military. So I don't think that the defense has carried its burden at this point, Judge, and I would just ask that Your Honor deny the motion.
Before I hear from one of Mr. Thomas's lawyers, what is your response to what I suspect I'll hear, which is there's no duty to retreat? You've explored that very thoroughly. Mr. Thomas could have left after that first verbal encounter where it's described as a headlock. It doesn't sound like it was anything like what Cooper maybe was doing to Bruce, but there was still an exchange. It wasn't a pleasant one. And Mr. Thomas didn't leave that feeling real good about Mr. Cooper. He could have left after that. After encounter 2, where he was punched, he could have left. But he wasn't required to. And even at that ending, when Cooper is running towards him, and that sounds to be uncontroverted, that it is Mr. Cooper who is approaching Mr. Thomas and not vice versa, Mr. Thomas stood his ground. And I think in Georgia, that's okay. There's not an obligation to diffuse or flee. It might be smart. There may have been 15 other better, wiser, more prudent ways to resolve it. But I don't think that's the test I apply, the wisdom test, because he failed. But he was standing his ground, and someone who maybe on several occasions said, I'm going to kill you or could kill you, is running at him and behaving, I think we'd all agree, somewhat erratically. So how does this not keep going forward? In other words, why is it appropriate to deny the motion at this juncture?
And Judge, I think it's important to highlight why he.
So I think it's important to highlight that we're going to hear from Mr. Cooper, and his testimony is pretty entertaining compared to what we heard from Mr. Phillips. And number two, I think on the bright side, considering that I got demonetized, only about 5 people watch my stream, so it doesn't really matter how bad I fuck up, I guess. But first we're going to hear from Mr. Swain, then we're going to hear from Mr. Cooper, and they're a little more entertaining.
Didn't leave, which shows that Mr. Cooper really was not a threat to Mr. Thomas. We have these previous engagements between the two where there's some touching, some tussling, some words exchanged, but at no point in time is a weapon ever seen, a weapon ever alluded to. And I don't think that words, no matter how opprobrious and threatening, should just allow an individual to shoot someone that they know is unarmed.
Okay. What are we going to hear from the defense?
Your Honor, as you know, the state knows, we only have to satisfy a burden of preponderance of the evidence, which is only a 51% showing that Mr. Thomas acted in self-defense. I'm going to start with the mischaracterization of evidence that the state started with, saying that Mr. Thomas doesn't normally arm himself when he gets in the car. Mr. Thomas got on the stand and he said, my gun goes with me everywhere I go. 99.9% of the time, my gun is in my car. So it's not that he armed himself to go to this party. He arms himself every time he's in his vehicle. So I wanted to start with that. Also, there's been plenty of evidence, and not just the evidence from Mr. Thomas, because obviously he's an interested party. But you've also heard evidence from Mr. Jamal Carter, who explains what's happening in the moment that the shot goes off. I get that there were multiple interactions between Mr. Thomas and Mr. Cooper, and the state indicates that Mr. Thomas was in no real threat during the other altercations. But in this one, when the shot went off, he was. There's a man charging at him who's already said on 3 times at least, that I will kill you, I should have killed you. Now you're running at me. Is this the time that you're going to kill me? Because you should have did it before, but now you're coming at me now. So I would submit to you that that is sufficient evidence to say that Mr. Thomas was fearful, and as a reason, he was fearful, and any reasonable person, I would argue, would also be fearful in that moment. But
fearful of what? Because the test is reasonable person, not just your client, but reasonable person. Fearful that he might get a drink knocked in his face again, fearful that he might get punched again, fearful of what?
Fearful that he's going to kill him because he should have killed him before, but he didn't, because obviously Phil's still alive at this third altercation. Right. So I should have killed you. So now that I have the opportunity, I'm going to kill you. So fearful in that he was going to be killed. We're not even talking great bodily harm at this point. We're talking death. And I think that was made clear not only by Mr. Thomas, but also by Mr. Carter. I think there's a lot of discrepancy in the testimony that was provided by Mr. Maddox.
Judge, I'm just going to object to Mr. Maddox.
Yeah, Mr. Maddox.
Okay.
It's fine that he's testified. I can't weigh that because I started thinking about, gosh, there's testimony that Mr. Cooper had his hands in front of him like this when he got shot. And there is testimony like that, but that is something that just because we were accommodating Mr. Carter's schedule, we took out of order.
And that is my mistake, Your Honor.
That's okay. So what we're confined to for this academic exercise
They did take him out of order.
is what your client testified to and what Mr. Carter testified to.
Yes, Your Honor. So given the information that was provided, even to the extent that Mr. Carter indicated that Mr. Thomas said, stop, back up. And he did it back up. The only time that Mr. Cooper stopped is after he was shot. There was one shot. And in that one shot, it stopped the threat of Mr. Cooper. So I submit to you, Your Honor, that that's sufficient evidence, at least proof proof by the preponderance of the evidence that Mr. Thomas acted in self-defense and therefore he should be immune from prosecution.
Okay. So at this point, my finding is that considering just the two witness testimonies, Mr. Thomas, who testified under oath, I feared for my life as this man approached me. And that's why I shot him. That's why I used deadly force. That alone, if one credits that testimony, and that testimony additionally included, I couldn't see his hand. He had his hand behind his back. That alone would meet the burden. There has been some impeachment of that testimony, not through Mr. Maddox, because we're tabling that, but Mr. Carter's description of how Mr. Cooper approached Mr. Thomas is not consistent with what Mr. Thomas said, but it's not, I don't find that there are sufficient inconsistencies yet, just considering those two witnesses, that it was unreasonable for Mr. Thomas to conclude that he was at risk of receiving serious bodily injury or at risk of being killed by the person who was running towards him saying or yelling, not just saying, either I am going to kill you or I should have killed you before, and approaching beyond the point where we heard from Mr. Carter, Mr. Thomas saying you need to back up or stop coming towards me, and yet Mr. Cooper persisted. That's not a finding that I'm granting the motion, but it's a finding that based on what I've heard from the first and the third witnesses, there is enough, in particular from the first witness, Mr. Thomas, who has shared with us as the only person in the room who can, this is what he was thinking. I have to push that through the lens of reasonableness, and that will become more fully informed as I suspect I hear more from the state's witnesses about what really would be reasonable to be thinking about Mr. Cooper and the threat that he posed. But I think based on what we've heard from Mr. Thomas and Mr. Carter alone, I can't say that the defense has not met its burden. So motion well taken, motion denied, and we will return to the state's presentation.
Judge, the state will call Christopher Swain to stand.
All right.
Yeah, the judge is very educational. He explains a lot, like very basic level. It's pretty interesting watching him, listening to him. You don't even get to watch him. I had no idea what he looked like. I had to Google it. So the bullet went through, and some say it ricocheted off the ground, and some say it actually went straight into the other guy. So we don't really know for sure. The second guy was unintentional, but this is the second guy coming up. And
How come you don't wear a mask anymore?
his
The
perspective.
sheriff say you didn't need to? The chief judge's word was enough? Good. Before you sit down, Mr. Swain, we just need to get you sworn in. Thank you.
Go ahead, have a seat. Just let it hang for the rest.
Chris Swain, or Christopher Swain. CHRISSWAIN.
Good afternoon, Mr. Swain. Thank you for being here today. What city and state do you currently live in?
Atlanta, Georgia.
And what do you do for a living?
In education coach, mentor.
Do you have any particular ties to any fraternities?
It's Omega Psi Phi fraternity.
And what particular chapter in Omega Psi Phi are you in?
Phi Kappa, military chapter out of East Point, Georgia.
Phi Kappa,
Kappa.
Phi double Kappa.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Mr. Swain, can you describe for the court how you know Kendrick Cooper?
Kendrick Cooper is one of my fraternity brothers. Pledged Tri-Mu or Mu fraternity, helped with his pledging process, kind of like his mentor, one of his fraternity brothers that kind of helped him through to where he is on fraternity.
And how long have you known Mr. Cooper?
7, 8 years.
And can you describe for the court your relationship with Mr. Philip Thomas?
Yeah, Philip Thomas, pretty much like he's my DP, or Dean of Pledges. The guy that pledged me, brought me through the fraternity. I'm a part of Phi Kappa Kappa. He's also a member of Phi Kappa Kappa as well.
And how long have you known Mr. Thomas?
Since 2010.
And how would you characterize your relationship with Mr. Thomas prior to any incidents we're going to talk about today?
Mr. Thomas is a solid dude. Anything I needed, call for. Sometimes I didn't even have to call him. He would just interject. If I was going through a rough time, financial phase, somewhere to sleep, somewhere to stay, food, you name it, he was always there with me. Coaching tips. He knew I was a high school coach, willing to come talk to my kids about getting to college, the steps they need to take. If you name it, anything.
So you guys are friends?
Yes.
So now I want to draw your attention to May 15th of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall any parties that you hosted that day?
Yes, I did. I had a party at my house.
And was your house located at 688 South Elizabeth Place Northwest?
Yes, it was.
Is that located in Fulton County?
Yes, sir.
And what was the party for?
Just us just getting together. Nothing really major. Just friends, family. I guess like during the pandemic, nobody was able to get out. Finally had the opportunity to kind of get together, and word spread, and everybody came over.
And what time did the party start?
Exact time, I really don't know. Can't recall. I say around 3 o'clock, something like that. It was good in the evening.
And about how many people did you have at the house?
Too many.
Yes. What Judge said.
And overall, how long did the party last up until
Up
this
until
incident?
the incident, for sure.
So could you give a time frame?
I
on
said
that?
from 3 to 12 to midnight.
About 8-9 hours.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall witnessing any type of physical altercations between Kendrick Cooper and Phil Thomas that day?
No.
Now, do you recall any incidents that ultimately led to a shooting?
Yes.
So can you describe for the judge kind of what transpired and resulted in this shooting at your party?
I say around 7 o'clock, 7:30. Phil approached me, asked me, did I know Kendrick Cooper? I explained to him, yes, I did. He was like, hey, can you talk to him for me? Or basically see what's going on with him. So I'm not sure exactly what kind of altercation they got into or what disagreement they got into or whatever the case may be. Phil kind of walked off, looked back, let me talk to Coop. I talked to Cooper and I was asking like, what's going on? He was like, I don't know, nothing, man. Like I told the guy, I don't really know who he is, so on and so forth. And that was pretty much it. And I was like, listen, all right, man, well, keep everything cool. I'm going back to host a party. Let me know if you need anything. And that was pretty much it at that point.
Now, Mr. Thomas was a guest at the party.
Yes.
What was Mr. Cooper's standing at the party? Was he also a guest?
Yes, he's actually staying with me at the time. He lives out of state, so he came to visit.
So when you were saying he was staying with you, was that for like a weekend?
It's a weekend.
At your party, was there the consumption of alcoholic beverages?
Yes.
Are you aware of there being any drug use at the party?
No.
After you were approached at about 7 p.m., walk the court through some of the things that happened at the party after you went back to hosting your event.
Dancing, hopping or marching, entertaining people. I then witnessed Cooper and Mr. Thomas kind of hidden behind my house, like have a shed behind my house. And along with some other guys, I guess to have a conversation that I don't know about. I would address the issue around 7 o'clock, 7:30. It had to be like, I say 2 hours later, an hour and a half later, somewhere around that time. At that point, I kind of waved them off, like, y'all go ahead, do what you're going to do. I was talking to a young lady at the time, so honestly, my focus went on them at all.
Understood. Do you recall witnessing Phil Thomas make any phone calls that night?
Yes.
What do you recall witnessing during that phone call?
During the phone call, he just kept calling random people. If I'm not mistaken, his line brother, Denarius Hurd, who's a lawyer, Kendrick's line brother, he called him. And everything was referring to, I guess, the altercation him and Coop had gotten into previously. I'm not previous to the altercation whatsoever. I was literally asked to kind of calm Phil down because he was trying to shoot Coop, something along those lines.
What?
So I wanted to go talk to Phil. My biggest
That's
thing was, hey man, just go home. We'll figure everything else out during the situation tomorrow, whatever the case may be, because I'm not sure exactly what's going on. And that went on for a while. We probably was outside maybe 2 hours just having a conversation or me trying to de-escalate the situation to see exactly what was going on.
I want to make sure I followed what you said. So several hours before Mr. Thomas shot Mr. Cooper and you, you had been asked by someone to engage with Mr. Thomas because there was a perception that Mr. Thomas was going to shoot Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
And did you talk to, and it may be you're going there in a minute, did you talk to Mr. Thomas about no shooting at my house? You can't do something like that?
Yeah, that was a given. It was more, I was trying to just get him to leave and go home.
Okay.
And the reason I say that was he was kind of looking for his gun in his car, and I kind of was looking for his gun in his car. And if you're looking for your gun in your car, then you can get in your car, you can go home. It's just that simple. So he was calling people. I don't know if he was asking for where his gun was, what the case may be, but we couldn't find it. I remember telling him verbatim, just go home. If somebody might have took your gun, they might have took it home or whatever the case may be, and we'll just get it later or we'll get it tomorrow.
I'm sorry, I just keep working on this one.
Yes, sir.
So several hours before the shooting happens, you are encouraging, maybe even directing, because it's your place, Mr. Thomas to leave.
Yes.
He doesn't leave. Does he tell you why he's not going to leave, or he just ignores you? I mean,
No, he kind of refers to, like, basically Cooper should be leaving, not him, pretty much along those lines. For me, I didn't really care who left. Cooper was already standing there, so that was not even a conversation.
It was who's more important. No, you're my bestest friend. No, you're my bestest friend. I'm your bestest friend.
More that you're at your car. Just go ahead and leave. I'll figure everything else out from here. I was just trying to de-escalate the situation.
Sure. So a few hours before the shooting, you were with Mr. Thomas at Mr. Thomas's car when Mr. Thomas was looking for his gun.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are you aware of Mr. Cooper getting involved in any other physical altercations with other people at the party that night?
Yes, Cooper got into a physical altercation with a gentleman named Bruce Richards. He got into a physical altercation with him. I was told there was a fight going on in my house when I walked in. It was kind of separated, broke up at the time. I don't know the details that led into it. I did see him and Bruce and Cooper get into an altercation. I did.
And what was the resolution to that altercation?
Bruce ended up leaving, going home.
What did Coop do after Bruce left? Do you remember?
No, at the time, Coop was getting dressed, get ready to go out with his guys from college. Some of his guys from college I had met the night before. Y'all came down, they was getting ready to go out to like a nightclub or night on the town or something of that nature.
So it's your understanding that he was leaving the party. He wasn't getting kicked out of the party.
No, he was definitely leaving. He was changing clothes to leave.
Well, as I'm getting it, and I'm getting this from you, Cooper couldn't get kicked out because he's staying with you. It's like saying to the resident, you can't reside here anymore.
Right. Like,
why
would I invite somebody in town and tell them they got to go?
Okay.
What I'm getting is he's still friends with
in
Coop
this
and not friends with
de-escalation period for
Mhm.
a
First
couple
guy.
of hours.
Mhm.
It's getting a little later in the evening.
Mhm.
And now we can kind of focus on the actual shooting incident.
Mhm.
Explain to the court how you recall that entire situation. How did that go down?
So I'm talking to Mr. Thomas or Phil Thomas, and as I'm talking to him, I keep seeing his eyes kind of go over my shoulder. And I'm like, what are you looking at?
Where are you and Mr. Thomas talking?
We're like in the middle of the street towards the schools. Where I stay at on South Elizabeth, I'm literally across the street from John Lewis Invictus or the Old Best Academy.
Okay.
We're pretty much like close to that street, that sidewalk towards the school.
Are you near his car?
Yes, I'm pretty much at the front of his car.
Okay. So you and he are at the car, you're talking with him, and if he's looking up the street towards the stop sign?
Correct. Right
Okay.
behind me, right? Just
Got it. And what are you talking to him about?
Pretty much just like go home.
Okay.
That was my pretty much conversation. Hey, just go ahead and go home. I figure everything else out. We can all have a conversation in the morning. Not sure exactly what's going on, but we have more level heads. That was my goal.
And at some point, did Mr. Cooper become involved with you and Mr. Thomas?
Yes, he did. So Cooper came up behind me. Again, like I said, I turned around. And when I turned around, in my mind frame, I'm de-escalating the situation. I think I got Phil on the ropes. He's about to go home. This will be a good night. We're going to be fine. Because again, I wanted to get back to the young lady. But
What if it
that's,
was shade?
I'm being real. That's what I was at. So
You wanted a lady, and this other gentleman was just trying to get to his plate of food. Everyone just had these very innocent desires. Want to go do these things.
I don't know if mine was going to be.
I don't know about how innocent yours were. But
So that was my main goal. And yeah, so I turned around, Coop was behind me, and I was like, no. Like, let me talk, like, just go, just move. Coop kind of side pushed me and was like, what's going on? Like, what's what? I seen Phil raise. I was like, no. Boom, shot Coop.
All right, now you were raising your hands with your palms up and facing towards me. They were outward. Is that your recollection of what Mr. Cooper was doing prior to being shot?
And Coop was like, he was kind of like this, right? I was standing, I guess, on the side of Coop. I just remember when the gun was fired, I was like, you shot me. I thought he just missed Coop altogether. I just remember he shot me. I grabbed my leg and I grabbed the fence because I was actually on the sidewalk at the school. And I just slowly slid down. And I just remember blood just gushing all out of my legs. I remember I was kind of mad because I had some Adidas pants I've been wanting for a while.
the young
And I
lady
had
was
some-
not going to like the blood situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but my shoes gone. I was looking for my shoes too. They were gone too. So I had some Adidas pants on some Adidas shoes, but everything was covered in blood. I vividly remember that, and it was black. So I definitely remember that.
So you recall being shot. Do you recall a firearm being pointed at you?
No, not at all.
Do you?
Well, he just said he saw him raise the gun and he said, no. But then the second witness that was inside the house and came down said that this guy, Mr. Swain, was standing directly behind Mr. Cooper, whereas Phil, the shooter, said he was standing next to him and the guy that got shot was coming up from the other side. So this is version number 3. I kind of want to make a chart of everything that's happened so far.
Remember where Cooper was coming from? I know that you said he was coming from behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where he was coming from or what he was doing?
I wasn't sure. I don't know if he came from my front porch of my house, because the front porch of my house is literally by the stop sign, or he was coming from the vehicle that he's supposed to get into with his friends from the stop sign, but they both was in the same general area.
About how far away were you and Mr. Thomas from that stop sign? Could you estimate the distance?
Yeah, it was probably like 50 feet. It wasn't far.
And how would you describe Mr. Cooper's demeanor when he was approaching you and Mr. Thomas?
Kind of like cool, but irritated. Like, what's the problem? What's the deal? Kind of confused, if you will.
When Mr. Cooper came up, it sounds like he came from behind you, so you didn't necessarily see him coming the whole time.
Correct.
Did he run past you? Did he walk up behind
I
you?
was able to turn around and literally touch Mr. Cooper.
Okay.
Like when I say touch, like grab him by the waist, like, hey, I got this. Kind of. He was like, no, I'm gonna have this conversation with him.
Got it. But as you turned and put your hands on his waist, he wasn't sprinting towards you?
No.
He was either walking or standing still?
Pretty much like right behind me.
Okay.
Mhm.
And you turned and engaged him and he
I
said,
was able to touch Cooper.
got it. And he indicated to you, no, I want to engage with
Yeah,
Thomas.
I'm gonna have a conversation with him.
Got it. He didn't want to talk to you.
Right.
Okay.
Do you recall Mr. Thomas say anything to Cooper?
No, I really don't. I just remember saying no, because I just seen him raising up with the gun.
Throughout the day, do you know if Mr. Cooper was armed with any weapons?
No, not that I know of.
So to catch you up, quick recap. Frat party, fight, go their separate ways, fight again, go their separate ways, fight again, and one gets shot. That's all we really know because so far we have 3 versions of the same story. So, yeah. The judge did deny their motion. I can't remember what the motion was, though. My brain's getting kind of foggy.
As things escalated throughout the day, was Mr. Cooper armed?
No.
You've testified you saw Mr. Thomas pull out a gun and point it.
Mhm.
At what point did you realize he had a handgun?
Once he pulled it out.
It's been interesting. Oh, he said pulled it out. Supposedly it was in his hand the whole time.
And you didn't have any weapons on you?
No.
I think everyone was drunk and nobody knows what actually happened.
I think that's all I have this time, Judge.
All right. Ms. Hawkins or Ms. Foster?
It's me again, Judge.
All right. We're ready for you.
John, I sent you a link if you want it.
Good afternoon, Mr. Swain.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
Okay, so
Do you want to go in a
I
laundry
got some
basket?
questions for you.
No problem.
I'm going to start with, this incident took place on May 15th, 2021, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And since this incident has taken place, you've spoken to your sister, Dominique Sadler, correct?
Correct.
You've spoken to Mr. Cooper, correct?
Correct.
You've spoken to Mr. Maddox,
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
Mr. Maddox is the gentleman who for a while was dating your sister?
Correct.
But
he
you've had
also pulled-
conversations with each and every one of those since this incident took place.
Sure.
Okay. So let me just actually start with the direct. The day, your Saturday, May 15th, 2021, actually starts with you going to the Shepherd House, correct? Or Shepherd Center?
Was it?
Doesn't even remember.
I can't recall.
You don't recall you, Mr. Thomas, Jamal Carter?
Yes, we did, because
Mr. Wright,
Tim was at the Shepherd Center. My line brother,
your
Tim.
line brother,
Correct.
was at the Shepherd Center.
Correct. We all went to go visit him.
Okay. And that was earlier in the day, correct?
Correct.
And you drove your own vehicle?
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Thomas drove his own vehicle.
Correct.
At some point you decided, hey, we about to have a kickback. It's gonna be at my house, correct?
Correct.
And this was not a Omega Psi Phi event.
Not at all.
This was family and friends.
Correct.
You had non-Greeks, Greeks,
Mhm.
women, children.
Correct.
All at the
Grandchildren,
party.
everything. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so couple things. Please wait till Ms. Hawkins is done with her question, even though you know the answer, there's no buzzing in early. And then Ms. Hawkins, you're doing a rapid fire questioning because you're just providing a setting, but you need to make sure Greeks, non-Greeks, and he's saying yes to each one and you're adding it. So we can't have you all talk over each other.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thanks.
Okay, so, and you said this party starts sometime in the afternoon.
Correct.
Before you make it back from the Shepherd Center, there's people already at your house, correct?
Correct.
And they've kind of gotten things rolling.
What's that? Yes.
Okay. And you get back, it's your house, you're the host of the party.
Mhm.
You gotta say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay.
No
So, and as you and the judge indicated, there were too many people at the party.
So that was a lot.
A lot of people. Got it. So you indicated that Mr. Cooper was already at your house.
Was he? I'm not sure. I know some people that were already there waiting on me.
Carrie.
I can't recall exactly who they were.
Was he staying? He was staying at you though.
Correct.
Staying at your house. I'm sorry.
But he wasn't like there 24/7 or waiting on me to come.
Sorry, you were behind my microphone. I couldn't see you.
No problem. Do you mind? It's your channel. Do you mind if I smoke on stage, or would you prefer me to stop
You're
my
fine.
camera?
I'm in YouTube jail. We can say fuck all we want.
All right, there we go. So
Sorry for anybody who doesn't like bad words.
Let's plow ahead.
Yeah. Are you caught up? So this is Mr. Swain. This is the guy that owns the house. This is his version of the story. So we've heard shooter's
Wasn't he supposed to
version.
be the person that didn't see shit because he was behind somebody?
Well,
If
he
I'm
was-
remembering correctly.
He was standing next to him, supposedly. And the bullet ricocheted. But then someone else, the guy that was sober inside, said that when he came out, he saw him behind the other guy and it went through his stomach and straight into his leg, compared to ricocheting and going sideways into his leg, which is what the shooter said.
That's
So-
not how ballistics tend to work, but anything's possible, I suppose.
I mean, it went through one guy and hit the other. Definitely. It's just a matter of how it happened. Yeah, other dude. Sorry, other dude. He called him
think
other
that-
dude.
Look, I think as a practical perspective, the way I was trying to figure this out, and I was thinking about it through a little bit last night, is it probably did enter and ricochet off of hard tissue and then potentially enter the other person. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. I don't know what your perspective
It
is.
went straight, it was through and through in his stomach. So it was all soft tissue on the first guy. And then the second guy, it went in and it hit an artery. Like it didn't even have to go that deep to hit an artery.
Okay, so the first one was through and through.
Yeah, it was through and through. Yes.
All right. That makes sense as well. I was trying to figure it out last night when I was listening to the story.
Yeah, it was super confusing at first. But the whole argument is was he in fear enough that he was acting in self-defense? And now this guy is saying that he went to his car specifically to get his gun, versus he testified that he was just moving it from the back to the front because he had locked it up in the back for safety. And the judge was like, you're a dumbass.
So that's where I had the question from a legal perspective, is because the way that you described it was not necessarily exactly the way that he described it. And that doesn't mean that either of you are wrong. But you described it as he was in the event, left the event, came back, did so again.
There were three
and at
events.
that point, he actually had the weapon.
So there were 3 events. The first event occurred while the party's going on. They broke up. They tried to get him to make up. The other guy punches him.
Okay.
They go their separate ways. The
Gotcha.
third event, he's standing at his car talking to this guy. Other guy comes charging up, and supposedly he raises his gun and shoots him.
So why do the first 2 events matter legally at all?
They don't really, because that's what the judge just said. He doesn't have a duty to retreat, and they're just trying to reinforce the fact that, hey, look, there was 2 altercations earlier in the day and he didn't retreat. But the defense is using it as proving that the victim was the instigator and that he had a right to be in fear because of those things that happened previously. Because the other guy didn't have a gun. He had no weapon.
Okay. Please proceed.
When you get in 2 altercations earlier in the evening, I think it adds more credence to your argument that I was in fear for my life than if like some random person just comes walking really fast towards you in the dark.
Okay. I don't necessarily agree with you, but fine. I'll accept the argument for the sake of its purpose. I don't want to argue with you on that.
Okay.
I can't say that he was sitting there waiting on me.
So he was essentially just coming and going as he pleased while he stayed in the house with you.
Correct.
Okay. And
I need to move.
everybody was just having a good time, right?
Great time.
So I'm going to direct you to, well, you made a statement to the police, correct?
Yes.
The day of the incident happened on the evening of May 15th, but you
Correct.
spoke to the officer either the next morning, correct?
I think it was next morning or the day after that, something like that.
Did they come to your place or were you part of this? A bunch of people went to the hospital.
Why is there a
No,
second
when I-
person?
Okay, you went to the hospital. You got shot. So of course you went to the hospital. Did they come to
Pause,
Which
please.
is, yes,
Why is there a second person talking? Because
that's the judge.
The judge is cross-examining a witness.
Oh, the judge is all in this. He is all up in it. He is like clarifying everything. Oh, Jesus. Clarifying everything, wanting to know what's going on, like having conversations with him. Like it's super casual in that regard.
Okay.
Like the first guy used the term chopping it up. The judge is like, what's chopping it up mean? And then later he made a joke about chopping it up. I mean, very cool judge, very chill.
I don't think that that's appropriate at all. If I were a litigant before him, I would have issues with that. But okay.
The judge doesn't have the authority to ask questions to clarify things in an immunity hearing.
Absolutely not.
I'm not clear on procedural rules. That is something I'm very unclear on.
The judge doesn't get to ask jack shit of their own authority unless it's relatively minor. They certainly don't get to be the person cross-examining on behalf of a litigant, because that question that he just asked, he's now the defendant's attorney because he's cross-examining a witness. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if it's for clarification of the record or something like that, I have no problem at all. But that question, he is cross-examining a witness on behalf of the defense attorney. So he
But
then
if you do it on both sides, is it acceptable?
No, it's not appropriate on either side twice over. So that just means that it's doubly wrong.
Interesting. Okay.
you? Like you just stayed home to clean up, including your Adidas. You had to clean those up.
Didn't get
So
that.
you went to the hospital. The police came to you. I don't know how long you were out
You need a judge.
before you were able to interact with folks.
Yeah, 1 second.
So now it might be
No,
the next
he's
day or
not allowed to ask
2
questions.
days after. But yes, I talked to a detective or officer that came into the hospital and had a conversation with me.
He should be
So this was
fired.
at Grady where you met with the police.
Correct.
10-3 of judicial ethics.
And you would agree with me that the conversation you had about the incident on either May 16th or some day after is closer in time to the incident date than today is, correct?
The 15th, you mean?
Yes.
You said 16th.
The 15th, the 15th, you said, let me back up. You said the party ended at 12 a.m. So we're now into the 16th.
Okay,
So you get transported to the hospital, correct?
yes,
So it's now the 16th, May 16th.
all right,
And the officers come talk to you
You're also
May 16th.
talking with the record.
I guess.
And it's fair to say that the statement you made on May
The
16th
judge is supposed to do your job.
more accurate or more close in time to the statement or to the
Regardless
incident
of
date, correct?
I guess.
Okay. So so the statement that you made was truthful, correct?
Yes,
And you were giving the full scope of what happened on that incident date, correct?
okay, yes,
And you told the officers everything that you knew.
from that standpoint, I think.
Okay. And at no point did you describe multiple times at no point did you say at 7 o'clock, I told Phil to go home.
I wasn't 7 o'clock when I told Phil to go home.
Okay, I guess we need to walk back through what the prosecutor was asking you because I'm a little confused about the timing. My understanding is that you indicated that you spoke to Phil around 7 o'clock.
No,
Okay.
I said around 7 o'clock, Phil came up to me,
Is
had
that,
a conversation with me about, do I know who Kendrick Cooper is?
is that not a conversation?
Yes, but I didn't tell him to go home.
Okay, so you had a conversation with Phil at 7 o'clock.
Mhm.
And he
No, I didn't
asked
speak to
you
him. He
who
spoke
Mr.
to
Cooper
me.
was.
Correct,
And during that conversation, you explained to him who Mr. Cooper was.
correct,
And then that conversation ended.
correct.
And you indicated that you were going to go talk to Mr. Cooper about what Mr. Thomas had already said to you.
Correct.
Okay. And you indicated that after you talked to Mr. Thomas, you went and talked to Mr. Cooper.
Correct. Well, we all were standing together, all three of us. Mr. Thomas walked off from him having a conversation. I turned to Coop and addressed Coop about the conversation.
And that's when he said, look, there's not an issue.
Correct.
Stop, Judge.
And so there's no issue. So at some point later,
I am not
there
going
becomes
to
another
your
incident
channel.
where
I promise.
Mr.
Not
Thomas
live.
and
It already
Mr.
happened.
Cooper are in each other's
I'm
presence.
losing it.
Correct.
Okay. And when you are talking about how you're standing, having a conversation with Mr. Cooper, Mr. Thomas,
Mhm.
you guys are at his vehicle, correct?
That's the third time, yes.
The third time.
Correct.
And the third time, the conversation is at the very end of the night. Everything's getting shut down.
Well, not necessarily shut down. The party was still going.
So about what time was the third incident or the third interaction?
It was around between 10 and 11, 12 o'clock, somewhere around that time before we got shot.
So we're talking about a 2-hour window span.
Correct. No, that's right. That's right. That's accurate. We was outside that long having a conversation.
You and Mr. Thomas were
With
Yes.
outside
DJ
that long?
outside. So
3 hours.
So you guys are outside having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Thomas is getting ready to leave.
No. I'm trying to convince Mr. Thomas to leave.
He's at his car
He's at his car looking for his gun.
looking for his gun.
Correct.
Okay. And it's not, his gun is not on his person. Because if
No.
it was on his person, he know where it is, correct?
Correct.
So he's looking in the back of his car for his gun.
Looking for in the back, front, side, doors, looking everywhere for his gun.
Okay. And I imagine at some point he finds his gun.
Correct.
Okay. And when he finds his gun,
May I ask briefly?
He's leaving,
and
right?
I don't mean
No.
to be intervening. How old is this guy that he's at a frat party?
No, they're the fraternity brothers.
Years later? Okay, so this didn't happen at a college. It just happened to be some sort of a reunion.
No, they get together all the time. I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I did some research on it, and some people have commented on it that basically this particular fraternity specifically are very close knit. Most of them were college athletes. A lot of them were former military. A lot of them went to college a little bit later because of the military, and they stay connected and spend
Okay.
family.
Okay.
They're like a family. But I have a question for you while we're paused. So
Yeah.
this is the third person we've heard from and third significantly different story.
That
So
seems like a problem for the prosecutor.
what do you do in that situation?
You try and knit their stories together. If presuming they have additional witnesses that they're going to call that can knit the story together, or you do it on your close. I mean, at that
I think
point,
you're right.
what is your alternative?
I was just curious, like how, as an attorney, you handle that when you have a case, but you don't have
You
facts,
ask for a motion to dismiss.
which is kind of what they're doing, you know, with the immunity. Like, if you call it self-defense, if they rule it self-defense, then the case is basically dismissed, because the second charges were possession of a firearm and commission of a felony. And if that charge is dismissed, then, I mean, they can come back.
If
I read the case law.
the underlying felony is dismissed, then yes, possession of a firearm during felony is an attached to the underlying felony, so they all just go away. I mean,
And he was legally in possession of the gun. He has a concealed permit.
The way that you described it the last time I was going back and forth over in the chat, for me, I don't think that this should have been a prosecutable crime, but who knows what the orders from above on these poor ADAs are. I mean,
Yeah.
it just is the way that it is. I have a case that Knight sent me that I have to look at, and I might run either tonight or tomorrow, where, what the hell is her name? Kim Gardner over in St. Louis had an order show cause hearing, and she sent one of her underlings to appear on her behalf, which I don't think is particularly appropriate, but I have to look at it more fully before I actually comment on the story. But this is what it seems. It seems like there was a poor decision, and there was a lack of willingness to admit that it was a poor decision and to just walk away from it.
Well, this is the one also where he
always can.
He
The
admitted doing it to the person, the assistant district attorney. So they have DeKalb County coming over into Fulton County to prosecute it. I think I told you about it the other day.
Yes.
So that political dynamic right there might play a little bit into what they do.
Not insignificant, because from a geographic perspective, Fulton tends to be poor inner city. DeKalb tends to be a
Step above.
a wealthier suburb district. So I don't know who's actually calling the shots at that point.
I think the problem is if you look at it as a whole, like, dude was stupid. He should have just gone home, but he stayed there and put himself in a really bad position.
Well, I'm not
trying to
draw an opinion on his particular behavior that night, one way or the other.
But the judge even said that earlier.
I'm trying to think about the political incentives, and why are they having a DeKalb prosecutor come into Fulton
Because
as opposed to extraditing him back to DeKalb?
Because it happened in Fulton County.
Okay. And so what is the reason that they are pulling in a prosecutor from another district?
Because he confessed to the assistant district attorney, who may have to be called as a witness.
Oh, so okay.
So it would be a conflict of interest.
Yeah, all right. I forgot that. You might have said that to me already, but okay, now I understand.
And on with the show.
So they essentially recused themselves.
Yeah, they had to.
Okay.
He never had an
Let me tell you what I understand the record to be, so we don't rehash this, and then you go where you want to go with it. My understanding is, Mr. Swain, is that you and Mr. Thomas spent some time at his car a couple hours before the shooting when he's looking for his gun, because you had heard, hey, this guy's looking for his gun. You went out and engaged with him and said, just get in the car. Just get in the car and leave. You know what? Come back tomorrow. We'll find your gun. If someone took it, life will be better for everyone in 12 hours. These are my words, not yours, but you should leave.
Pretty much.
Mr. Thomas declined to leave. You disengaged, go back to being the host of the party. Fast forward 2 hours, you and Mr. Thomas are back at the car again. You're actually by the school having a conversation. That's when Mr. Cooper came up from behind and the shooting happened.
Correct.
Okay.
It really bothers me that they're not clarifying what looking for the gun means, because looking for the gun could mean, hey, I'm going to get my gun because I'm going to shoot this guy. Or it could mean, hey, I went to get my gun to leave and I can't find it in my car and I think someone might have stole it. Like, those are two totally different
It very
scenarios.
well could mean that.
And they don't clarify it.
This is a bench trial, right?
I was
Yes.
unclear about how many times we were at Mr. Cooper's car. I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. Thomas's car before Mr. Cooper approaches it.
Okay.
So in the second encounter with you standing at Mr. Thomas's car, that is when Mr. Cooper approaches, correct?
Correct.
And he approaches from behind.
Behind me, yes.
So Mr. Thomas can see Mr. Cooper approaching,
Correct.
but you can't.
Correct.
Okay. So you don't see.
I think that they
Mr.
do
Cooper
actually
run
do
out.
the whiteboard with the
No.
map.
You don't see
So that's
where
why
his
she
hands
wants
are
to
as
use
he's coming up.
the microphone.
No.
You just see Mr. Cooper once he gets to the space that you're in.
Correct.
Wish
That's
could
when I
draw
turned
on the
around.
screen.
Okay. And when Mr. Cooper got to
I'm not
Mr.
the
Phil's,
videographer.
Mr. Thomas's car,
Mhm.
that is when you try to stop Mr. Cooper, correct?
Yes. Excuse me. Yes.
Because Mr. Cooper was coming at Mr. Thomas.
No. He was walking up to where Mr. Thomas was at. I turned around because I had the situation under control. At least I felt. So if his presence is in the area, then he's going to get irritated again. Phil would. When I feel like at that point, I could have talked Phil down probably another 2 or 3 minutes to go home. Does that make sense? So if you're irritated with the individual and then that person shows back up, if you're at 2, you go back to 10.
That's your assumption.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's how I felt about it. So I thought I had everything under control. If he doesn't show up, everybody goes home. We can talk about this tomorrow morning.
But Mr. Cooper did show up.
He did. Correct.
Okay. And you tried to, from what I understand, you tried to grab Mr. Cooper and he told you, nah, get off me.
I was just like, yeah, come, like, hey, bro, I got this. Like, don't step back. I got this.
But he didn't step back.
No.
Okay.
And all this is taking place within, I guess, feet, inches of Mr. Thomas's vehicle.
I think we're at the front of it, yes.
And in that statement, so, okay, let me just back up to your relationships with Mr. Cooper and Mr. Thomas.
Correct.
So you know both of them, correct?
Yes.
And you've known both of them for a good amount of time,
Yes, I
correct?
do. Yes, ma'am.
How long have you known Mr. Cooper?
Mr. Cooper,
Can
probably.
you pause for a second? I just want to make a comment
I think
about lawyering. The problem that I have is that anytime you see a lawyer say, let's just back up to this, in my personal opinion, and I don't know anything real, I really know very little about this case or about the lawyers involved, and I'm not trying to denigrate them in any way. But when you have to say, let me just go back a second and then establish the relationship between your witness and, because at this point it is her witness. She's obviously the defendant. She's not the one, she's for the defense. She's not the one that called this guy. If you have to reestablish it after you've done all of the work to elicit testimony as it relates to the incident, and then you have to go back, that's sloppy lawyering in my personal opinion. you get that out ahead of time so that you can discuss the matter currently at issue in a clear and cohesive manner without having to either break it up or let it go so that you can go back and do other stuff. I don't understand that method of interrogation on the stand. I personally
Could she
don't.
be
Not the way that I
going back to that to try and show that he was better friends with one of them than the other?
Wouldn't it be better to do that in the first place?
Possibly.
Is there any benefit at all to hold it until later?
If there was a jury, then, you know, presenting it in a certain order may have a benefit, but with a bench trial, probably not.
I mean, I can't think of a benefit, and maybe something will come up that I'm going to be proven wrong, and maybe depending upon
7,
what you
8
know
years,
about
something
the
like that,
witness.
if I'm not mistaken.
Let's see.
Okay. And how long have you known Mr. Thomas?
Definitely since 2010, for sure.
2000. Okay. And you would say that you were closer to Mr. Cooper?
No, not really. I would give more time towards Mr. Thomas than I would Mr. Cooper.
Okay. So
She doesn't know what her
the
next
statement that you made as it relates to all of this incident, back when the incident occurred, you indicated that you were standing there having a conversation with Phil and you were trying to calm Phil down, correct?
Correct.
And you were focused on calming Phil down and not Mr. Cooper, correct?
Correct.
And at that moment, you were talking to Mr. Thomas.
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Thomas wasn't yelling or screaming at you.
No.
He was ideally calmed, correct?
Come.
Okay. And he wasn't yelling back and forth to Mr. Cooper.
No.
He wasn't spewing threats or anything to Mr. Cooper.
No.
You and Mr. Thomas were just talking to one another as friends.
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Thomas was by his own truck,
Mhm.
not by Mr. Cooper's car or
Correct.
vehicle.
Correct.
Okay. And your statement to Investigator Smallwood was that you were paying attention to Phil, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Phil was standing outside of his truck,
Yes.
with his back to the truck.
Yes.
Okay. And you were standing kind of like in front of, but to the side of Mr. Thomas, correct?
I think I was standing directly in front of him, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And that means your back was to your house.
My back was to the stop sign. My house is to the left.
Okay. But so the stop sign is back here
Correct.
and your house is kind of like right here.
Correct.
Okay. And
She keeps repeating
I mean,
the same thing.
so when you couldn't have seen where where Mr. Cooper's hands were as he was approaching, correct?
Correct. I didn't see him at all.
Okay.
I seen literally off of Phil's eyes. That's how I seen him. If someone keeps looking in a certain direction, we have a tendency as people to look that direction.
Okay.
So Phil did like 2 or 3 times. I turned to look, I didn't see nothing. I turned around and Cooper was behind me, walking up behind me. That's why I was like, no, no, no. I got this under control. He moved me to the side. He was like, what's going on?
Okay. And looking at Phil's eyes, he looked concerned?
Kind of like, yeah, that's him, or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
Because at this point, we already know it's an altercation. We already know it's an issue. So, but I'm saying if we already know it's an issue, I'm trying to de-escalate the issue. The gentleman shows up that you have an issue with,
over.
there's probably gonna be another issue.
But you weren't privy to whatever happened between them earlier in the day.
I kind of had an idea what happened to them earlier today.
You didn't see it
I didn't see it. No,
Aspect that
You
annoys
heard
me is that she
from
opened
somebody else.
no. Didn't hear anything from him.
questioning.
What was that?
Here's one. thing that annoys me is she opens every questioning segment with "and," and I just did that. But as a practical matter, it's really, really frustrating because you know that she has a rundown. If you're doing any sort of, I'm not going to show you my notepads, but if you're doing any sort of examination of a witness, you know what you want to ask.
Yeah, she has a list of questions from his interviews and stuff that he did previous. She's even referenced him a couple times.
Yes, she has. But you don't need to say "and" every time you ask a witness a question. It just, maybe the average viewer,
And another thing,
it doesn't bother them. But when I hear "and" 7 times for no damn purpose,
like, really? Oh my God.
it's not
Like,
actually,
are you
it's not actually
serious?
serving a grammatical purpose. You're using it as a pause.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, well, I just gave a perfect example.
It's giving your brain a second to get everything else
It's
in
when
order.
you have "like" or anything else, and it is just infuriating once you recognize it. Sorry.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Now I'm going to recognize it the rest of the stream.
Sorry.
I think this one's almost done, and then we're going to wrap up for today. And then tomorrow we have the body cam video and the second victim.
Anybody else? I didn't speak on it, and I won't speak on it because I didn't see it. I just knew they had an issue or they had an altercation. Period. That's all I know.
But you know that because either Mr. Cooper or Mr. Thomas told you, or someone else told you that?
I heard other people
Why is
talking
the
about
judge
it,
doing the?
but everybody didn't know. So say if we had 50 people at the party, out of 50 people,
Why is
probably
the judge doing the
5
lawyer
might have
job?
known what happened. I heard them speak about it. Again, I was hosting the party.
Mad.
Whatever they had. They dealt with it. I already addressed the situation earlier at like 7:30. They got back into it. Why they got back into it, that I don't know. Why you got other people involved, that I do not know. How did we go from that altercation to someone being shot around 12 o'clock? That I still don't know.
It was 10 o'clock earlier.
So I'm lost on it altogether.
It's 12 now.
Okay. And so
The defense
who
attorney won't know.
is now behind you,
Correct?
and you're in front of Phil.
Yes.
And you indicate that you see Phil raise his gun.
Yes.
And when you say raise his gun, he brings it up.
Yes.
Cooper's not shot in the chest, is he?
No.
He's not shot in the head, is he?
Correct.
He's not really shot in the upper body, correct?
I think it knows Adam,
This is
like
your
ab area.
argument.
Down here.
Correct.
And you'd agree that
No.
Mr. Cooper and Mr. Thomas are about the same height.
I'm not sure. Probably 5'11", 5'10", 6 feet. I'm not sure.
But they're roughly, no one towers over the other.
Not that I can think of.
And where do you compare? Are you about the same height as those two guys?
I probably am 6 feet.
Deep breath.
But on direct, you also said to Cooper, hey, I got this. And Coop was like, nah.
Correct.
So Coop, you couldn't stop Cooper.
And at that time, no. By the time I moved Coop
This
out
is
the way,
worst
well, Coop moved
argument
me
I've
out the way,
ever
excuse
seen
me.
from a
Coop was
defense
being shot.
attorney ever.
What was that to stop?
Okay, but and I'm just gonna go back to.
And I mean that
Sorry.
sincerely.
You're standing directly in front of Mr. Thomas.
Correct.
And Coop comes up from behind
Correct.
and he moves you out the way.
No, I turned to Coop and look at Coop like, hey, I got this. Then Coop's to push me to the side. And then Coop, I guess, engages Mr. Thomas.
So when you turn,
Mhm.
are you turning and moving, or you're here and you do this?
I'm turning, I'm moving, and I'm like trying to just say, calm down, I got this.
Okay,
The situation's taken care of.
okay. But in doing that, turning and moving,
Uh-huh.
Cooper doesn't stop. He's still coming to Mr. Thomas.
Correct.
And also during that interview with Detective Smallwood, you indicated that you don't think
Needed drink.
Phil meant to shoot you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You weren't Phil's
2:30 is
target.
good
Correct.
enough,
If I spent
right?
2 hours outside talking to him, we had no altercation. No, he didn't intend to shoot me at all. Not at all.
Previously, prior to today's testimony in court, and probably, I think it was sometime closer to the incident date, you had a conversation with someone that worked in my office, correct?
Who?
You spoke to Mr. Thomas's attorney or one of his attorneys at some point.
Probably did. Because I'm not saying that. I don't spoke to so many people from field side or other people. I don't know, not being funny. I'm sorry, I don't know.
That's fine.
But I probably did.
You probably did. Okay. And in that conversation that you probably had, you talked about how you have a case pending, and you are looking to get paid for your injuries, correct?
Judge, I'm gonna object to relevance.
Thank you.
No, I'm looking for a response.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I heard it.
Your Honor,
What he
I
said.
think it goes to the credibility of the witness in his testimony.
Okay, you can keep asking.
There are a lot of
Okay.
questions that
Well, yes, I do.
relevance is not one.
But I haven't filed a civil suit towards Mr. Thomas.
One second.
You said you have not?
No.
Oh my God, the judge is literally doing the lawyer's job for them.
No, he already answered it. He couldn't
So
understand.
your
him.
statement was, I haven't.
It doesn't matter.
Filed
The order
a
has
lawsuit
it.
yet,
Correct.
but you do have an attorney.
I do not.
At this time, you don't have an attorney?
No, I do not.
But when you spoke to the individual,
I was speaking to, I was speaking to, and I have spoken to several attorneys that I asked to represent me in a civil suit. No one has represented me. No one will represent me.
I'm shocked.
and
There's a reason.
let me just back up to that conversation that you were having with Mr. Thomas for 2 hours outside.
Mhm.
Where was this young lady that you were trying to court?
She's probably on the house. I mean, at the house, on the patio, doing
On the
whatever she was doing.
house?
I'm not sure at that time.
You
That wasn't my
were-
focus.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but I'm not sure.
But you were so busy trying to get back to her, you were able to spend 2 hours outside of the field talking?
At that point, I was focused on the situation at hand. When they told me what was going on, she had nothing to do with anything.
So I just want to clarify, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
confused about these two conversations, these two long conversations you had with Phil outside.
Okay.
So you had 1 2-hour conversation with him, and then you had another 2-hour conversation with him.
No, we went inside that long. No.
That when there's not.
Okay. But you did have a conversation with him before all of this happened?
Yes.
No further questions at this time.
Okay, I have a couple areas I want to cover with you, and then we'll see if there's any redirect.
Yes.
My understanding from your testimony is, in effect, you had 3 conversations with Mr. Thomas. You may have seen him a bunch of times that night, but there was the one where you and he and Mr. Cooper around 7 o'clock. He's like, "Hey, who's this Cooper guy? Hey, he's all right." And Mr. Thomas wandered off, and you spoke with Mr. Cooper. He says, "It's all good."
Right.
You take him at their word. You're doing your thing.
Mhm.
Fast forward a few hours and you find yourself with Mr. Thomas at his car.
Mhm.
You've already heard word that Mr. Thomas is looking to get his gun. He's still mad about things. You're trying to get him to leave. He can't find his gun. He's looking all around. That exchange you had with Mr. Thomas out of his car, the first of 2 that you had out of his car, are you saying that that lasted for 2 hours, or it was about 2 hours before the shooting?
No, it had lasted for 2
Pause
hours.
for a second.
You and he went back and forth.
Like,
Yeah, it's almost over. There's a couple questions I was going to have you answer as soon as it's done.
Okay, because this is driving me absolutely fucking insane. Is people believe that just because it's recross or redirect,
That's the
that they
judge.
suddenly think that they're allowed to ask leading questions. No, the answer
That's-
is not.
It's the judge.
That's
That's
the
the
judge
judge.
talking?
Yes.
Are
That's
you-
the judge.
Is that for real?
Yes, that's the judge.
Okay, you know what? Fine, fuck it. I'm giving back my law degree. No, that's absolutely not appropriate at all, ever. Particularly to bench trial. Do we allow the jury to go and ask questions specifically about the facts of a case?
Yeah.
No, we don't.
Yes, they do.
No, we don't.
What are you talking about?
Give me a single example.
In the stepmom case, there's many, in Florida we don't, but in many states, they actually allow.
They're allowed to ask questions of law. They're not allowed to ask questions of
No, they are allowed to ask questions of the witness.
Well, all of
They write them on a piece of paper, they pass them forward, they give them to the judge. The judge calls both attorneys
I've
up, they go
dealt
through
with
them.
that before, where juries have asked questions while deliberating.
No, it's during the testimony. At the end of the testimony of the person.
I've never seen that. And if there is a state that does that, it should be
There's actually
it should
quite
be
a few
expelled from the union, and we should be done with it.
The first time I saw it, I was really confused because I don't think we allow that here.
We certainly do not.
I had never
What
seen
is
it
New
before.
York?
So I was pretty shocked when I first saw it in a hearing, but since then I've seen it quite a few times. Does the jury have any questions? And they write them down and pass them forward. And then, what case was it where they actually read them out loud and would talk about them? Oh, it was the Alex Jones case. In the Texas one, she would read the questions out loud on the record. Usually they do it
Give me a
in a sidebar, and they would go over and determine what's appropriate and what's not, because sometimes they would ask questions that were outside of the scope of what the testimony was. All right, while you're looking that up, let's watch the end of this, because
he was outside, whether he was calling someone on the phone, whether I was trying to calm him down, whatever the case may be. That window, that span of window was about 2 hours.
That was long.
Yes.
Okay. About how much time, give or take, was there from when that ended and there was that second conversation with him at the side of his car when Coop showed up? Or was that all part of the same two?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I mean to cut you off. My apologies.
It's okay.
All of us pretty much together, like one long span.
Okay. So you were still in the course of encouraging Mr. Thomas to leave when at the very end because you got shot, at the very end, Mr. Cooper showed up.
Correct.
That would have been part of it, just it was at the back end.
Literally.
Okay, got it. Did you hear Mr. Cooper yelling anything about killing anyone, or I should have killed you, or I'm gonna kill you, as Mr. Cooper was approaching you and Mr. Thomas at the very end of the night at your house?
No, if I did, I would have probably turned around before. Just
Hey, how did I call it?
Okay, and you were always closer to Mr. Cooper than Mr. Thomas was because you were in between Mr. Cooper as he approached, even though you didn't know he was approaching, and Mr. Thomas.
Correct.
So anything Mr. Cooper's saying is effectively going by your ears all the way to Mr. Thomas, if Mr. Cooper was saying anything.
Correct.
All right, last area for me. You ultimately are shot. You told me you reach out, grab the fence, and slide down. About how far were you and Mr. Cooper from Mr. Thomas when he pointed the gun at Mr. Cooper and shot him?
I'm thinking a couple of feet, maybe like a car length.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, he's probably at the back passenger door or the back of his vehicle, and Cooper was at the front.
Sure.
And I was to the side, like I guess the sidewalk where I was shot at.
Could you or Mr. Cooper have reached out and touched Mr. Thomas at the time the shot was fired, or was he further away than that?
I definitely couldn't have.
Okay.
Why is
Like
that?
at all. Like he was nowhere near me.
Legal analysis.
For me, in order for me to touch him.
All right. And what's your recollection as to whether Mr. Cooper was so close or not so close to Mr. Thomas that he could have reached out and touched him? Not that he did, but that's how close they were.
Mr. Cooper was not when he got shot, I don't think he was close to him as arm reach, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. All right. Mr. Costello, do you have any other questions for Mr. Swain?
I don't think so.
I have questions.
All
for
right.
the judge.
Ms. Hawkins,
All right. I am writing this time down today. I'm writing the time down today. Hold on. We're writing the time down. We're writing the time down. We're not forgetting to write the time down. Now, I will lose the piece of paper I wrote the time down on, but I wrote the time down. Okay.
Would you like me to? I can do so as well.
Then I'll forget that you did it and I'll forget who to ask for it.
I'm losing my freaking mind. with
Okay,
this
so
judge.
there's two ways to look at it. You're a lawyer and you're saying he's doing the lawyer's job. He shouldn't be doing that. But he's getting to the truth of the matter.
No, he's not.
Why?
Because the questions he's asking are something that a lawyer would not be able to ask.
What do you mean?
He's asking questions that are outside of the realm of the rules of evidence.
Okay. I'm confused.
But he can do it because he's a judge. A lawyer could not ask those questions. A jury could not ask those questions. He's doing the job of interrogation that a lawyer ought to, but he has a preconceived notion of how the case should end. And so he is asking questions capable of making a record to cover his ass. And that's the only thing that he gives a shit about. He already knows how this trial is going to end.
If that was the case, wouldn't he have issued his ruling quicker?
No.
Oh.
Because he has to cover himself. He has to build a record to cover potential attacks on appeal.
I kind of felt like he was clarifying on both sides, like for both people. I didn't really get the feeling that he was leaning one way or another.
Judges are capable of subtlety. That doesn't mean that it's not clear to people that are able to read between the lines that he's already made a determination.
All right. So on that note, Austin would like to know. Here. All right. We're done. We'll make the puppers bigger.
Yeah. What should or can a lawyer do with a judge who injects himself into examination like this? In that particular day, in that particular moment, the answer is be respectful, follow their rulings. You don't want to get dragged out for direct contempt, and then address it behind the scenes in appropriate fashions. I mean, every state has a judicial review board. Every state has some means by which a lawyer can say that a judge handled a circumstance inappropriately. But unless and until they actually do something that affects your clients, you don't have anything necessarily in that particular case. So you remain being polite and you don't find yourself in criminal contempt.
So I guess this was part 2. It was a 2-part question.
Like as a lawyer, do you just suck it up and make the best of it, or do you have an obligation to try to remove the judge's injection?
You put that like in there to be a smartass. I know you did. Thanks.
All right. So, yeah, like I said, in the moment, it's the same. Let me give you an analogy. If you get pulled over and you think it was inappropriate, are you going to punch the cop in the face? No, that's a really bad idea. Don't do that. Take the ticket, bring it to a lawyer, and go to court. Same thing, just one step over. If you think that you were treated inappropriately in court, particularly as an attorney, but also as a litigant, there is a body that is in place to hear appeals either on their rulings or their behavior. that you have some form of recourse. It's not necessarily precisely what you would like, but let's put it this way. Cop pulls you over on the side of the road and you jump out of your car and you punch him in the face, probably ending up with a bullet in your gut. That's a bad outcome. But there are processes. And that's why why do you think I'm getting so frustrated about this judge interjecting his questions into the colloquy? It's because that is, who knows? Maybe I'm totally wrong because I'm not a lawyer in Texas. But from my experience, that's unusual when it comes to a colloquy and a bench trial. Meg, I'd leave it back to you.
All right, next question. Sorry, I was trying to find the example to show you of the questions. Can he still be sued civilly if the criminal immunity is granted? Yes. O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, absolutely.
O.J. Simpson was found guilty in a civil court, even though he was found innocent in a criminal court.
It's a different standard of law. One is beyond a reasonable doubt. The other is preponderance of the evidence. So it's a different legal standard. And you can have the same facts presented to you, and because the standard is different, it doesn't quite rise in the jury's minds to that watershed. It's a little bit lower than that, but it can still hit the other. If that makes sense as kind of an analogy. But yeah, civil is always preponderance. I mean, not a lawyer at all, but the criminal immunity would say the act of shooting was justified. But I'm not the case of having been shot. I don't really understand the way that
a reasonable person would say if you're not criminally liable, you can't be civilly liable. But you're in a different court with a different jury, a different set of people with different mindsets who might view it differently. And maybe the testimony is a little bit different, and maybe it sways a little bit different towards the other person. And like John just explained, the level of certainty you have to get to is a little bit lower in a civil court. So in questionable cases where it's not completely clear if the person acted in self-defense, they could be found innocent and criminal and guilty and civil. It's happened quite a few times.
Well, let me add an example, for instance. I don't know. There are a handful of examples. Let's say somebody drives.
Stop talking about Tucker Carlson.
Huh?
Sorry, nothing. I was replying to Raven.
Yeah, fair enough. I wanted to do that show today, but because I did the thing with Eric at noon, I think I need a nap, and then I'll figure out what I'm doing tonight. And I also have some work for a private client that I am going to make sure that I get taken care of.
2 dogs, 3 cats for me. Is that you, or are you just asking?
But no, take the example of somebody who, I don't know, let's say they drive their car drunk into your house. Okay? And for whatever reason, your local district attorney doesn't believe that they're able to prove that they were drunk, or, has concerns that it's possible that their office believes after examination that there could have been a heart attack or whatever that caused them to end up in your front.
What if the blood sample gets lost or they can't use it as evidence in court?
Right.
They don't have the evidence to prosecute.
The difference is that you're not the state, so you're not beholden to a Brady. Let's say, great example, actually. Okay, so let's say that there is an injury. Somebody hits you because they were drunk. Car on car. Right? The state loses the blood evidence. State's screwed. because
Yeah.
they cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt without that evidence. And they can try and they can lose. Flip side, you can sue the shit out of them on a civil basis for your injuries and whatever damage to your property. Yeah, you can go a million miles on a more likely than not standard, and you don't necessarily need that blood slide.
All you got to do is get the bartender, somebody that was sitting at the bar watching him drink. I mean, there's
Or the fact that he hit you.
someone who saw him swerving.
That's all. You need a more likely than not.
Yeah.
And, the more likely than not is very helpful when it's the case of, say, the car accident where they actually hit you.
I think that's a really good example. Like DNA and blood and things like that.
The government might not be able to lock them up, but you might be able to recover civil damages.
If they have
And
insurance or money.
That's the divide.
Otherwise, you're screwed.
Yeah. And it should be that way. Because I think, from my personal perspective, and you can tell me if you agree, there should be a higher standard of proof when you're taking away somebody's liberty as opposed to taking away just money. That's the way the system was set up. That's why we have civil and criminal. Criminal can take away your liberty. Civil cannot take away anything more than money.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And so that's the way that we set up the system.
And that definitely makes sense.
I know.
All right, my friends. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, if you're done, then
I was going to wrap it up. Did you want to talk about something else?
Nope, not at all. I have nothing to say.
That was quite a stream for me. Haven't done a long one in a while. Lights are giving me a migraine. So thank you all for coming. It's been fabulous as usual. We'll do it again tomorrow, wrap this shit up and be done with it and see the other guy. The other guy's a little entertaining. I think so. Maybe you guys don't. Maybe that's why there's only 5 people watching me because,
That's
I love
probably
you,
my
YouTube.
fault.
I know they saw John and it was like, they love you. You guys make sure you go over to John's channel and check it out. He explains a lot about the law that I could never even come close to telling you guys about. But I will see you tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. You're amazing. I love you. Take care.